The wind whispered through the jagged rocks outside the cave, carrying snowflakes in slow spirals down into the valley. It was dawn. Pale blue light crept into the dark interior of the cave, washing over animal hides, cracked bones, and sleeping bodies. Iraq stirred beneath the furs. His breath turned to mist in the air. He blinked slowly, watching the cold morning light shimmer against a wet stone wall. Around him, others still slept, his mother curled around his baby brother, a hunter snoring softly in the corner, and the fire barely smoldering in the center. But one figure was already awake. Old Garan, the group's leader, sat near the fire, his silhouette lit by the flickering red coals. His eyes were lost in the distance, staring past the cave entrance into the vast, frozen unknown. His presence was silent but heavy like the mountain itself. Iraq sat up quietly. Today felt different. The fire came to life again, kindled by Garen's practiced hands. Drywood snapped and crackled. Smoke spiraled upward, catching the light. The tribe slowly awoke, one by one, their breath clouding in the cold. Iraq's mother handed him a strip of dried meat and smiled briefly before tending to her baby. A small girl crawled to the fire, giggling as she drew in the dirt with a charred stick. Laughter echoed briefly off the stone walls, warmth in the heart of labor. But beneath it all was tension. Food had been scarce. The traps had been coming up empty. And the sky, heavy and gray, warned of another snowstorm on the horizon. Today, the hunters would go far. Outside, the world was white and unforgiving. Iraq stepped carefully into the snow, wrapping his furs tighter. His bare fingers brushed the snow from a trap he'd set days before, a tension sinew rope hidden under powder. Nothing, just rabbit prints, already softened by wind. He reset the trap with a sigh. Then a deep, guttural call echoed through the air. Garan was calling. The hunting party was forming. This was Iraq's first time. His hands trembled as he took his spear, stone-tipped, bound with sinew, the shaft worn smooth from practice. They moved in silence across the white expanse, Garan leading, 3 seasoned hunters behind him, and Iraq bringing up the rear. The only sound were the crunch of snow beneath their feet and the low whistle of the wind. Garan raised a hand. He knelt, touching a large hoof print in the snow. Reindeer, big, fresh. They moved like ghosts between trees, creeping over frost-covered roots and low branches. Then they saw it. A reindeer, tall and strong, pawing at the snow to reach the dried moss below. Its breath steamed. Time slowed. Garan signaled. The spears flew. The animal reared, bellowed in pain, and stumbled. Blood painted the snow dark red. Iraq stood frozen for a second, before instinct carried him forward. He grabbed a fallen spear and drove it into his side. Silence returned as the animal collapsed. Iraq's heart thundered. His hands were slick with warm blood, but no one spoke. Garan simply nodded. That was enough. They dragged the kill home, 4 of them pulling with rope, steam rising from their backs in the bitter wind. The others came to meet them halfway, cheers muffled by fur hoods. Iraq's mother embraced him fiercely, her eyes shining but her mouth set firm. There was work to do. They carved the reindeer with flint knives, stripped the meat into thin pieces, hung it near the cave entrance to dry. Fat dripped slowly to the ground. Smoke from the fire turned rich with the scent of roasting marrow. Iraq sat beside his father, once a fierce hunter, now with a permanent limp from a bear encounter seasons ago. The man said nothing. He simply placed a strong hand on Iraq's shoulder. The boy didn't need words. That night, under flickering firelight, Iraq joined the wall of hands. His cousin showed him how to grind red pigment from rock, how to spit and smear it onto the palm, how to press firmly to the cave wall. One print, then another. The wall was a sea of overlapping hands, ancestors, siblings, mothers, children. Iraq stepped back and looked at his own mark. It glowed softly in the firelight. He felt something stir deep inside him, a quiet pride, a thread tying him to those who came before. But life was never still. The next morning, a woman returned with blood on her leg, cut deep from slipping on a frozen log. Panic flickered in her eyes. Iraq's mother worked swiftly, crushing leaves and bark into a salve, applying it gently, wrapping the wound with sinew and hide. Her hands were calm, steady. Iraq watched her carefully. He realized then, surviving wasn't only about hunting. It was about knowing, healing, protecting. 3 nights later, the oldest among them, an ancient man who no longer spoke, passed away quietly. They laid him in a shallow pit on a rocky ledge, facing the morning sun. His body was wrapped in furs, his spear beside him. Wildflowers were scattered gently on his chest. Iraq placed a carved tooth at the old man's side, a symbol of strength for the journey beyond. The wind howled. No one cried, but grief hung in the air like mist. At dawn, Iraq climbed the hill alone. Snow crunched beneath his feet. The sky stretched endlessly above him, pale, heavy with unspoken cold. He looked out across the valley, where mountains touched the horizon like the backs of sleeping beasts. He saw nothing moving, only white, stone, and shadow. But inside, something burned. He was no longer a boy, no longer just a shadow in the firelight. He had hunted, bled, created, watched life begin and end. He raised his spear, not in triumph, but in quiet understanding. He was Neanderthal. He would endure. Under the frozen sky, the wind did not stop. Even as days passed, even as the sun rose and fell behind thick clouds, the wind remained, a howling beast that swept across the frozen plains, reminding Iraq and his people that winter still ruled. Inside the cave, warmth flickered from the fire, but outside, the world was growing harsher. The snowfall thickened. Game grew scarce again. Even the traps that once caught rabbits now sat untouched beneath layers of snow and silence. Iraq had changed. The hunt had left something in him, not just pride, but weight, responsibility. One evening, as the tribe huddled around the fire, Garan spoke. His voice was like stone grinding on stone, rare, heavy, never wasted. A cave to the north with black walls. Warm air flows there, even in deep snow. My father spoke of it once. It may still exist. Silence fell, then murmurs. Moving meant risk, but staying meant slow starvation. Garan turned to Iraq. You will go. Take 2. Find it. Mark the trail. Iraq's breath caught. He looked to his mother, who didn't speak, but nodded once, tight and proud. He was no longer just a boy who followed. Now he would leave. At dawn, Iraq left with 2 others. Kale, a broad-shouldered hunter with a crooked nose and few words, and Senna, a quiet girl with sharp eyes who knew how to move like a shadow. They moved fast through waist-high snow, pushing west toward where Garan claimed the cave might lie. The world outside was colder than before, deafeningly quiet. On the second day, they spotted movement. Wolves. 5 of them. Lean, desperate, eyes glowing amber in the white dusk. The humans froze. Iraq raised his spear slowly. Kale whispered, "Back up. Do not run." But Senna had already lit a torch. Fast, clever from dry grass wrapped around a branch. Flames snapped in the wind. The wolves hesitated, snarled, then vanished into the trees. That night, they built a high fire and did not sleep. The third morning, they found it. Nestled in the cliffs, hidden behind a curtain of ice, was a cave. Not just a hole in the rock, but a true shelter. Wide, dry, with a ceiling blackened by smoke from fires long gone. And inside, paintings, dozens of them. Red deer, mammoths, handprints, strange symbols, stars, spirals. They were old, ancient even to Neanderthals. Iraq stared in awe. He placed his hand near one of the faded prints. Same size, same shape. Someone like him had been here before. Many generations ago, Senna whispered. They lived like us. Kale simply knelt and touched the floor. "This is good," he said. "Warm stone. Smoke hole. We bring the others." Iraq nodded, but deep in his chest, something stirred. More than warmth, more than pride. It was continuity, a feeling that they weren't alone in time, that their footsteps echoed others long forgotten. On the way back, the snow thickened. The wind screamed louder. Kale coughed hard and stumbled. His leg had begun to swell, bitten by cold. Frostbite. They made a sled from branches and pulled him. Iraq and Senna barely spoke. conserving breath. Every muscle ached. Time became a blur of white and pain. But they made it. When the first shapes of the home, cave appeared in the snow, Iraq fell to his knees. Garan and the others rushed out to meet them, dragging Kale in, tending his leg with warm water and herbs. They lived, and they would move soon. The migration took 3 days. Women and children rode on crude sleds. Meat and tools packed tight, spears on backs. They left behind the handprints, the fire pit, the wall where Iraq's marks still glowed faintly. But in their hearts, they carried it all. The new cave welcomed them with silence and stone. But the paintings on the walls, they spoke. They told stories without words, just pigment and gesture. And slowly, Iraq began to understand. These weren't just pictures. They were memory. That night, as others slept, Iraq dipped his fingers into crushed charcoal and red clay. He approached a blank section of the cave wall, and he began to draw. Not a handprint this time, not a deer or a bison, but a figure, a young man in furs, holding a spear, standing beside 2 others before a wall of wolves and snow. He drew the cliff, the cave, the torch that saved them, the stars above. He didn't know if it was beautiful. That didn't matter. It was true. When he finished, he sat back, his hands black with ash. Outside, the wind blew softer. Inside, the fire burned quietly. And Iraq, son of the cold, child of smoke and stone, understood this simple thing. They were not just surviving, they were remembering.